John Lusk here of Lusk Archery Adventures. Series testing, successful hunting. I've got another fixed blade broadhead test for you today. Thanks to a buddy, Luke, who sent me a pack of these. I'm going to be testing the Black Widow Innovations ARACHNID. This is a really cool head. Now I'm going to be using all the different test regimen protocols that I have for 2022, and for a detailed description about those, as well as the scores for each of the different categories that I rate these heads, you can read about that in the description box right below this video. I'm using my Bowtech SR6 set at 72 pounds, and I'm using a Bishop FOC King arrows for most of the tests. But for the really hard impact ones, I'm using the Bishop FAD eliminators. So let's zoom in here and check out this ARACHNID and then put it to the test. Here's a good look at the ARACHNID. This is a cool looking head, and it's got some really unique features. First of all, it's 6 blades. Okay, so that's really neat that you got 6 blades with a 1-inch cutting diameter, giving you a total cut of 3 inches. Now, it doesn't, make a really wide hole, but I imagine it's going to cut a lot of tissue and open up that 1-inch hole fairly well in an animal. The blades are made out of stainless steel. The tip is made out of A2 steel, which is much more resistant to impact than typical stainless steel, about double the resistance to impact. So that's going to make that tip extra durable and strong. That's kind of cool. Now, another thing about it is that it comes with 3 extra beefy chisel tips. And these are also A2 tool steel, and man, they're really big. And those are, if you put them on, 125 grain. So you can either shoot it in 100 grain like this is, or in the 125 grain just by unscrewing and screwing in this other beefy chisel tip. So I like that modularity, and I like that 125 grain head makes up that weight, not just by adding a heavier washer, which really doesn't do anything to strengthen the head or make it fly better or anything like that, but by adding an extra beefy tip, you're making that head a lot more durable, and you're putting that weight all the way at the front, which is going to increase your front of center just a little bit, as opposed to putting a heavier washer back here. Now, the blades are relatively thin. They're 0.027 inches thick. That's probably to be able to make up the weight. And they're also single bevel, which is really interesting. It's probably done so that they don't get too narrow, too thin. If they're double bevel at 0.027 inches thick, they'd be pretty thin right there. But anyway, they are pretty thin as it is, 0.027, and they're all single bevel. Also on the back, they're sharpened on the back. So if you're pulling out of a target, that'll make it a little easier. Or if it's backing out of an animal, it will be cutting tissue while it backs out of an animal. The ferrule is made out of 70-75 aluminum, so it's a pretty short ferrule there, and it's a pretty stout aluminum. So I would think the durability is going to be relatively good. Now, one thing about this that I will say is when you're putting it together or when you unscrew it from your arrow, those blades can fall out really easily. A lot more easily than a lot of different designs. And so you got to be extra careful. Now, they come with these little bases that you can screw on when they're not on the end of your shaft, just to keep the blades in place. And you really want to use those because it is pretty frustrating trying to get them all lined up and get them snug on your arrow. But this looks really cool. I'm eager to put it to the test and see how the ARACHNID performs. $150. The ARACHNID is right there in the middle. It's kind of hard to see, but it penetrated 6 7/8 inches. $225. It penetrated through 57 layers. The head's in perfect condition after 3 shots through the MDF, so now it's on to the steel plate. Here's the head after 2 shots through the steel plate. It held all of its blades perfectly. None were lost, none were bent. The edges did get pretty mangled and chewed up, as you can see there in the picture, and the tip got a little bit blunted. But again, they all held in place, and they made really nice holes in this steel plate. That's a pretty cool hole there with those 6 blades and a really round circular hole in the center. Here's the head after impacting the concrete. Now, it's already gone through the MDF 3 times and the 22 gauge steel plate twice, and it did really well impacting that concrete. There's a bit of a wobble to it. The ferrule got a little bit bent, the tip there did, but other than that, man, it held together very well in this 0 penetration test. So what did you think of the Arachnid? Man, I tell you, it performed a lot better than I was expecting it to. I didn't think it would fly as well as it did, or penetrate as deeply as it did, or be as durable as it was. So I was pretty impressed with it here. But you read through the score sheet and see how it measured up and how it did in the areas that matter to you the most, and then check out the total cumulative score as well as the corresponding Lusk grade.